Hey everyone, Dr. D here, and in this video I'm going to be answering more student questions. So let's get started. Alright, here's a question I pulled up earlier. Uh, Good afternoon, Dr. D. I would love to know your view on life as a grad school student. What were the most challenging parts, finances, exams, studying, professors, etc., and how to handle that, or just best advice? What are some perks or things to keep in mind you can provide us while working on undergrads and want to pursue grad school? Lastly, in pursuing a degree in science, I imagine that being good in math is a must. Do you know what a person can do to be better? All right, well, good question, good question. All right, let's do it. So, let's start from the beginning. I would love to know your view on life as a grad school student. So, life as a grad school student is pretty difficult, especially as a uh, biology grad school student. Um, I was a PhD student at UT Southwestern Medical Center, and it's basically a full-time job to be a graduate student. In fact, it's such a full-time job that they pay you to be a graduate student at UT Southwestern. I didn't know that PhD students got paid, but apparently they do, especially PhD students that are doing research and are grant funded. So if your research is directly contributing to publications, and those publications are helping the lab to get grant monies, then part of the grant money that you get from the government, the National Institute of Health, that grant money pays your salary as a student. In fact, you're not even allowed to get a job outside of graduate school because you're supposed to be full time. They expect you there pretty much morning, day, and night, and a lot of times they expect you to work on weekends. So they're paying you a salary and that salary is not from the school. That salary is from the professors' grant money from the government. So they are paying you. They expect work out of you, and it is really like a full-time job, and you're not allowed to have any other jobs while you are in research graduate school. So, what is my view of life in grad school? Again, well, at least you're not paying for school. That's one relief. They're paying you. When I was a student at UT Southwestern in 2003 is when I started, and I was there till 2009. They paid me $27,000 a year to be a student. And that's not because I was some star special student. And every student at UT Southwestern got paid. And they all got paid $27,000 a year. It's probably much more now because it's no longer 2003. It's probably in the low 30s now. I could check. But that was great. And not only that, they also offered you full benefits. What do I mean by full benefits? I mean vision, dental, health, all of that good stuff. Really good benefits. It was called UT Select Plan for your health benefits. It was Blue Cross Blue Shield. Really good benefits. I'm talking like if I felt sick or I didn't feel well, I would go to the Aston Clinic, which is a really high-end clinic. By the way, UT Southwestern has 5 hospitals on campus, right? You got Children's, you got Parkland, you got University Hospital, you've got the Aston Clinic, you got Zale Lipsy. You've got all these amazing premier hospitals right there on campus. And the Aston Clinic was where students went when they got sick. And you didn't even need an appointment. I'd feel bad. I'd feel sick. I'd go into the Aston Clinic. I think it was like the 7th floor. I'd just go to the part that helps graduate students, and I'd say, hey, I need to see the nurse practitioner. They'd say, have a seat. 5 minutes later, I'm talking to the nurse practitioner with no copay, no payment, nothing. Just here, talk to a specialist that day. So you were treated pretty well. I didn't have to pay tuition. I didn't have to pay for books. Tuition was waived, and we got an extra stipend to help pay for the little tuition that there was and books as well. So we didn't have to pay a thing for that. So, conversely, they kind of own you. um, they're paying you and they're taking care of you, your health, dental, all of that. So they want work. And so what I would do is, you wake up in the morning, you mosey over to lab, and you start your experiments. So what I would do is show up in the morning, set up some experiments, do some experiments all day. Um, take a lunch break, go back, do more experiments, take a dinner break, go back, do more experiments, and usually I'd be there till 6 at night, 7 at night. If I had a really tough day, with a lot of experiments going on, I could be there till like midnight, 2, 3 in the morning. It's not unusual to do that. We used to just, after midnight, crank up the music to keep us awake and, do more work. And I wasn't the only one there after midnight, and I wasn't the only one there on weekends. In fact, weekends, the parking lot was still full because everyone was there on weekends as well. So it's very stressful. Um, uh, you're getting paid to be a student, like a professional student. You gotta produce. Um, that's something, by the way, that's something that really surprised me about graduate school. And that was that you don't take all that many classes. You think you're getting a PhD, right? So it's a bunch of classes and studying and books and classes and studying and books. Nope. I think I only had like 6 months or 7 months of actual classes, and that was at the very beginning. And then that was it. The rest of my 5.5 years of PhD there was no books or classes at all. It was just go to lab, set up experiments, try to answer my hypothesis, or my question, get come up with hypotheses, answer the thing, publish some papers, discover something new, and get out of there. So it really was like a full-time job. I'm not kidding. It was like wake up in the morning, go to school, do experiments all day, night, including weekends. Half the time, I didn't even get holidays. I'd go in, Thanksgiving, go in, Christmas, go in. Maybe not the full day, but it was hard. It was hard. The graduate students don't go home. um, I think there were weeks in there I was working 105 hours a week, especially when I was trying to graduate, especially when I was trying to get out of there and finish my thesis. 105 hours a week, by the way, is like working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. Basically, if I wasn't sleeping, I was in the lab, busting my tail trying to get publication so I could finish my thesis and move on and not be there more than 6 years. Yeah, right. So that was that. It was very stressful. So that's my view of life as a grad school student. It's a job. It's a full-time job where you're getting paid close to minimum wage for the amount of hours you have to work. But at least you're not paying for school. What can I say? What else? What were the most challenging parts? Yeah, the most challenging parts were just being away from home. For me, it was being away from home. Uh, you know, I a lot of my family lived in LA, and some of my family lived overseas in Dubai. And when I got into UT Southwestern, I didn't know a single soul in Dallas, so I had to put all the stuff that fit in my little Jetta, my red Jetta, and drive to Dallas. And I didn't know a soul in Dallas. I didn't have a family member in Dallas. I didn't have a friend in Dallas. But I had to, as a 22, 23-year-old person, I had to put whatever I owned in my Jetta. And by the way, I had only been driving a month, maybe a month before I drove to Dallas. So imagine you're 23, just finished your bachelor's degree, and you never really driven before, but you got a car, I guess, and you're not great at driving yet, and you're not familiar too much with how things work on the road, but you have a car and you're in this new PhD program and you're just gonna, I guess, drive to a new state and find a place to live. And it was really super challenging, and I didn't know anyone, and then now I have to pay my own bills, pay all my own bills. I lived off of that $27,000 a year. I lived off of that. I didn't ask for any money from my parents, though they are wealthy. So didn't ask for a penny. Paid my own car insurance, which, by the way, that things you don't think about when you're that young. I was 22, 23, never had driven before, so no driving record. As a guy who's less than 25 years old, who'd never driven before, who needs insurance, and family insisted I get comprehensive insurance. I kid you not, of my 27 grand a year I was getting paid, I was spending around $320 a month for comprehensive uh, insurance as a single guy living by himself with no insurance. It was brutal. So things you figure out, I guess, finances. I guess that's the next part of your question, finances. Yeah, I mean, after taxes and all that, I was only getting paid what, like $1,700 a month. Um, and I found a cool roommate. My roommate Jason, he was also a graduate student at UT Southwestern. He is a brilliant, brilliant guy. I think he did his undergrad at MIT. He's a really inspirational, super brilliant guy. He was always coming up with interesting schemes on how to augment his graduate school pay. And if I had only listened to him, I would be quite wealthy right now. Very interesting guy. So anyway, he owned the condo that I moved into, and I rented a room from him. So I paid him $500 a month for rent, which is pretty good. That's not very much money to pay for rent, and that included internet and all the electricity and all utilities. So it was nice, $500, and that left me with $300 a month. I was paying for car insurance because I was single and had no driving history, and a guy. Um, and other finances, but it was tough, man. I did not have extra spending money. I was on a shoestring budget. I would take like the same little can of chunky soup to work every day. I would take a can. My lunches every day. I would skip breakfast, no breakfast. My lunch was a can of chunky soup, and I would buy like 50 cans when they were on sale. I would get a can of chunky soup and like a soda or something. That was my lunch, and everyone knew it. So every day I'd be like, okay, what flavor of chunky soup are you having today? And so that was the big joke. But I learned how to live frugally. I didn't buy things. I didn't splurge on anything. I couldn't splurge on anything. I scrimped. I saved. I made do without. And I focused on school. I struggled, and I kept the end game in my mind. I was like, I'll get my Ph.D. one day. I'll be able to afford things one day, but for now, I need to make do with what I can, the bare essentials. Nothing fancy. I had very cheap hobbies. And now I can have more. I guess costly hobbies. Right now, my hobby is automotive, and I'm buying cool tools like Snap-on tools and things. And this stuff was just a dream back when I was younger. When I was in graduate school, I couldn't afford a thing. I couldn't afford fun hobbies. So my main hobby was gaming. Video gaming, and I liked gaming because it didn't cost a fortune. Once you bought the game, you had the game. You could just play the games, and you could spend hours and hours playing the game that you bought once. So it was my escape. I would go to school. I would work all day. Do my experiments all day, morning to night. Come home, heat something up in the microwave, sit down, play some games till I got tired, go to bed, rinse and repeat the next day. And it was tough. It was really tough, and I couldn't afford things. I couldn't afford fun things. But everyone's got to make sacrifices, and it's like I tell my students. Um, you can either enjoy when you're young, or you can enjoy when you're older, right? Uh, but just keep in mind, there's a whole lot more older than there is young. So what I mean by that is, you know, even though it's tough, you got to focus on your career when you're young. You got to focus on getting that degree and getting that job. And once you've got that job that you've worked so hard for, that's when you can enjoy your life. Like right now, I've got my job, and it's a secure job, and my wife, she's got her job, and she's a CPA. She's making good money, and we're both making good money. Now I can just say, hey, let's remodel the house. Oh, I have a house, buy a house, buy cars, remodel things and get cool tools and have neat hobbies like that aren't cheap. Could I do this when I was your age, when I was in college, or when I was in graduate school? No way I could do any of that stuff. But did I work hard day and night and bleed and sweat and cry to get where I am so I can? Yes. And can you? Yes. What else? What else? These are really good questions. I'm so glad to be answering these. I hope it helps, and you guys can see that I didn't, get to where I am now just with luck or silver spoon or something like that. I struggled just like you guys are, and I can tell you, as someone who was, poor at school at one point when I was in high school, I wasn't all that good at school. As someone who's pulled themselves together and said, okay, I'm going to take school seriously, and I'm going to work hard, and I'm going to do without, and I'm going to focus on the prize. It does get better, and you do succeed, and then you can enjoy. You want to go on vacations, go on vacation. You want to buy a house, buy a house. You want to do whatever, you do whatever. Because the careers that biology takes you in, as a biology student, you're going to be doctors, you're going to be nurses, you're going to be pharmacists, you're going to be all kinds of things, right? And all of them pay well, and you can enjoy life all you want. You wanted to take that trip to Italy, take the trip to Italy. You want to help charities, help charities. You want to go on a vacation and just go fishing, do that. But you have to earn it. You have to earn those jobs that pay you, because and the reason they pay you so much is because you did something that other people can't do, and that get that stellar education and do that job for people and take care of their health or take care of their well-being, and or take care of the patients, and that's why you get rewarded for that. So what else? Exams. Exams. Luckily, graduate school like I said, it didn't have many exams, you know what I mean? I only took classes for 6 or 7 months, but those exams were brutal. Oh gosh, I'm going to do a whole video on how brutal the exams were at UT Southwestern. You know why? One of our classes was called Core Course, and in that class, you had a different professor every single day. Can you imagine a class where you have a different professor every single day, and that professor is a leading expert in a different topic? So one day you have a leading expert in mitochondrial genetics. The next day you have an expert in organic chemistry. The next day you have an expert in immunology. And then your exam is basically 20 pages long, and each page is a question or 2 or 3 from a different professor in a different field. It was the most brutal exam process ever, and it was so hard. You could just take the exams at home, what we would do is wake up in the morning, go over to the computer, turn on the computer, download the exam, which was posted that morning, and then you had all day to work on the exam, and you had to turn it in by 5 p.m. at school. So that was brutal and very stressful. But again, we only had classes for a few months, and then it was just like a job, research job. Studying, we made study groups. We went to bookstores and studied. A lot of my studying was done at bookstores, because I could get a coffee, sit down, and just focus. It was easier than trying to study at home. I would usually get distracted, watch TV, or go play on my video games or something like that. And so, studying at a bookstore was really helpful. You know, that helped me a lot. And professors, yeah, professors. That there are professors that make their topics seem easy, and then there are professors who, you know, yeah, they let's just say they're not the best at explaining things or giving you the resources you need to be a successful student. So, with professors, you just, yeah. Now picking a professor to work with and do your research with, that's a whole nother ballgame. That's really difficult to do. I'll have to make a whole video on how to pick a research professor, a PI, a principal investigator to work with, because that's going to be the professor that you do your research with, that basically you're conducting your thesis study with, and so that's a challenge by itself. You have to pick someone who meshes with your personality, and I don't know if I was the best at that decision. What else? What are some perks? Like I said, the main perk of graduate school over medical school is graduate school, they're paying you to go. Medical school, you're paying a fortune to go. So someone with an MD degree, someone who got a medical degree, they probably owe 100, 150, $200,000 to the school, right? Or to some, wherever they got their loan from. Whereas if you're a PhD student, you owe nothing. In fact, when I finished my PhD, not only did I owe nothing to anyone, because I was being paid the whole time to be a PhD student. Not only that, but I had, money in the bank that I managed to pilfer away, to store away, So that was kind of a good perk. And another perk is, just understanding something to that level is a perk by itself. Just being able to understand biology. I understand biology at the PhD level, molecular biology at the PhD level. And then I went on and did 2 postdocs, right? I did a postdoctoral fellowship, so I did more research at UCLA, and then more research again at UT Southwestern. So I have a PhD level, and then fellowship level on top of that in how your cells work, and how cells work, how molecules work inside of the cells, how hormones work, all that, how genes work and your DNA works. I wouldn't trade that for anything, because I understand how the body works and I understand how cells work. And just understanding life is an amazing, amazing privilege by itself. It's amazing. I love it. What else? What perks or things to keep in mind you can provide for us while working on your undergrads? Oh, okay. If you're working on your undergrad and you're pursuing graduate school, just get good grades. Also prepare for what's known as the GRE exam, the Graduate Record Examination. So it's like the SATs, but for getting into graduate school. It's basically math and English component, unless they force you to take a subject exam. It's just look at the graduate school you want to go to, and look at the graduate school you want to go to, and it'll show you what the requirement is. Is it just a general GRE exam, or did they require the subject exam? UT Southwestern did not require the subject GRE exam, which was nice because I didn't take the subject GRE exam. So I only applied to schools that didn't need it because I didn't want to take it. What else? Lastly, in pursuing a degree in science, I imagine that being good in math is a must. Not really. You need enough math to do well on the GRE exam, and that doesn't go above algebra, really. There's no calculus on the GRE exam. And then once I did go to the PhD program, there was very minimal math. I think the hardest math we did was some thermodynamics problems that had to do with delta G, and even that was like basically algebra level. So yes, I took Calculus 1 in undergrad. I took Calculus 2 in undergrad. That was requirement. But I didn't use any calculus in my PhD. So yeah, I mean, being good in math is always helpful, but it's not, you know, that it's not a must. You know what I mean? It's something that you need to do well on the GRE exam. It's something you need to pass, those classes as an undergrad. But I got my PhD in genetics, and I didn't need anything above algebra to do that in graduate school. So, I hope this all helps. That was a very good question with a lot of parts. I hope I didn't leave anything important out. All I can say is that one last thing to leave you off on. Getting a PhD in genetics is amazing. But one thing I started realizing was that in molecular biology in particular, genetics, molecular biology, I started noticing that it is exceedingly difficult to find a job. Okay, and by a job, I don't mean like teaching or anything like that. I mean becoming a research professor or opening your own research lab at a university or doing research in general. What I noticed is that there are so many PhDs in that field, in molecular biology and genetics and all that, that the number of PhDs far outweighs the number of research jobs, research positions. So I knew very few people who, with their PhD, actually became a researcher. And by researcher, I don't mean a low-level researcher like an instructor or lower, but I mean like a professor researcher, or even went into biotech as a researcher. It's kind of it was kind of unfortunate because to me it was always a head scratcher why there would be a field where you get government monies, essentially taxpayer monies, paying me, for example, $27,000 a year, paying me to be a student and get a degree, and training me with taxpayer money and NIH money, and in the end saying, "Oh, we just don't have research positions available for you." And not to say that was a bad thing, because I found a passion for teaching, and I think I'm a far better teacher than I ever was a researcher. But you would not find the same thing, I would say, in medical school. So, for example, if you went to medical school and you got your medical degree, your MD, and then you did fellowships in that, you're pretty much assured you're a doctor and you're going to have a practice, or you're going to be able to do whatever you want to do as a doctor, right? But in the PhD world, unfortunately, the reality is that you could do everything right academically. On paper, you could be amazing. You could go to the top PhD program. You could go to a top, like I did. I went to a top PhD program. Then I did fellowships at UCLA and at UT Southwestern. And at the end of the day, they might say, we don't have, positions for you. So, you came out ahead because they paid you to be a student, but you kind of came out behind because at the end they're like, psych, there's no job. Whereas with the medical school, yes, you have to pay a lot. You have to take out loans to be a medical student. But at the end of the day, you are a doctor, and you're going to have patients, and there are jobs out there galore. So it's up to you. Are you willing to take the risk that you're not going to have a job at the end of the day? And by a job, I don't mean like any job. Again, you're going to have a job. As a PhD, you're going to have a job. I have a job, and I love my job. But I'm talking about a job in research where you are actually doing research, which is what you've been trained to do and paid to during your training to acquire. I don't know. It's really up to you, but that's the reality of it, or what I've seen from it. I hope this all answers your question. If I could do it again, would I? That's a question I just posed myself. If I could do it again, I don't know if I would have done a PhD, simply because you don't need one to teach. And secondly, it's a lot it's 6 years of working 7 days a week. They're training you to do research, and at the end, it's almost criminal to not have positions available for you. It's almost a crime. So, what would I say about that? I would say, um, personally, me, I would go the MD route if I could have a do-over. But am I, am I bummed out? No. I absolutely love teaching, and I feel like I'm good at it, and I love having the flexibility and all of the I don't know. Basically, it's something that I wouldn't have pursued if I hadn't have had this, you know, fork in the road. And I am so glad I did, and I'm so glad I am where I am. But I don't know if I would have pursued it if I had a clear avenue toward research. Make of that what you will. I hope I answered your question in a candid way. And, thank you for the question. I guess tonight's question is just going to be yours. Thanks for tuning in. I'll answer more questions later this week, and see you guys next time.